Now that is an impressive result. Chelsea, this young Chelsea team under Mauricio Pochettino, travel to Etihad and come away with a 1-1 draw. Let's get into it.
And blue is the colour. Essien! Drogba! Lampard! That could be the championship!
Greetings! Welcome back to Couch Critic with me, Dennis P. For what is your Chelsea match review, but more specifically, a tactical synopsis of Chelsea's performance at the Etihad versus the champions Manchester City. But before I get into all that, you already know what I need you to do. It's hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification button to keep up with the latest. It will help me and it will help my sponsors who go by the name of Major League Socks. And fellas, if you ever want to walk in the footsteps of greatness, you know what to do. Just hit them up. The link will be in the description. Now, it's not very often you celebrate a draw. It's not very often as a Chelsea supporter, you celebrate draws as wins. This is such an occasion, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that this has been a very, very difficult season for this club. Last couple seasons in general have been very, very difficult to stomach, to watch, to enjoy the football that's being on display. And you go away to Etihad and you come away with a 1-1 draw, and for the most part you stifle one of the more deadly attacking outfits in the world right now. You frustrate them, you give them nothing to really feed off of. That's something you can hang your hat on, and that's kind of where I am right now. I really feel like Chelsea showed the discipline, determination, grit, and just overall organization, structure to take it to Man City, frustrate the hell out of them, and make it a very, very close game. Like one where probably on another day Chelsea should have won. I mean, there are opportunities both ways. Obviously, we're going to get into that. But what I really want to focus on for this match review is just the structure that Chelsea employed to stifle Manchester City's, playing out from the back, to stifle their build-up play and whatnot. And I'm going to be focusing mainly on Conor Gallagher. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't watch a lot of Manchester City. Not more than anybody else, that's for sure. I'll watch them maybe 3 or 4 times a year, outside of when they play Chelsea. And to be real, that's not really enough time to get a real strong understanding of what it is they like to do. Obviously, Pep Guardiola has been there for quite some time right now, but even with that said, his attacking shapes and whatnot often change. And when you're bringing Kevin De Bruyne out of the lineup and bringing him back in, of course you have to variate how you play to fit his his skill set as well. So we haven't really been seeing a lot of A1 Manchester City the last little while with De Bruyne being out. And even now it seems like they've learned how to play and build without having Kevin De Bruyne deeply involved. I mean, there was a time where Kevin De Bruyne would be on the ball 80, 90 times a game, where he's the guy that's basically the offensive conduit for what Manchester City want to do. And, those days just seem to be long gone. He's more of a final phase, the guy that you want to get on the ball in the final phase of the build-up play, the guy that's going to be delivering the bullets or taking them, taking the shots to make that decisive play in the final third. And I think Pochettino just did a really, really good job of analyzing and implementing a game plan to snuff out what it is, the supply line for Manchester City in order to get themselves playing. And it was just so obvious. Like, Gallagher, once again, putting in a shift. And this game is specifically why I think Chelsea need to find a way to hold on to this guy, find a way to sign him. I mean, not for crazy money like, 120K a week and upwards of that, somewhere in and around the 100K mark, but nothing more than that for the work that he does. But when you give this guy an assignment, when you give this guy instructions to, just basically be the guy that just takes Rodri out of the game, a guy that is world class without question, a guy that, always has an influence on matches and whatnot, and whether it be defensively, offensively, or just in transition, just his way of playing, his way of dealing with games is always very, very influential. And Gallagher completely took him out of the game, obviously through assignment from Mauricio Pochettino. Gallagher's man-to-man assignment was Rodri, who's a very, very tough matchup to begin with. And I thought all through the first half in particular, we stifled their build-up play. We stifled their ability to get into the first phase of their build-up play. We allowed other guys like Diaz, we allowed Akanji, and sometimes even Walker to get on the ball. Even Aki at times, but the one person that we focused on the most to keep the ball out of his hands was obviously Rodri, and it worked to perfection. Now for me, the reason why you want to take Rodri out of the game is because he's the guy that is the play setter for everything that happens in their attacking third. He knows where to dictate the next move. He's not just a destroyer in the back anymore. He's a guy that is very much a box-to-box presence, and as a guy that is very, very clever in, just initiating their attacking moves and whatnot. And the thing about it is, when you take him out of the mix, when you take him out of the build-up, it's kind of like taking the engine out of the car and just having the body. Because so much of what they do effectively runs through Rodri right now, and it was just genius to have Gallagher just sit on him the entire match and allow for other guys to dictate the tempo and the rhythm for the game. When you allow for guys like Diaz to come forward, step out from the back line and get forward, the proof is there. He's not as well adept at picking the right pass. He's not as well adept at setting the tempo and the rhythm for the game as Rodri would be. We had absolutely no problem with Akanji getting on the ball and dictating the first phase build-up play, because we know that he doesn't necessarily have that awareness about building rhythm and whatnot. He's obviously a center back. When you put a center back in the midfield and you ask him to be the more on-ball presence because the one that you have next to him is being marked out of the game, you're giving the responsibility to somebody that's not very comfortable in those roles. So obviously Akanji playing in that defensive midfielder role is supposed to liberate, Rodri, and give Rodri the ability to get forward and, basically stitch together those attacking moves, as he's done, more than a few occasions this season. He's been the deep lying playmaker for them. And, now that you take him out of the game and you have Akanji being the guy that's building it all for the back for them, it presents a whole lot of problems. So many times in that first half in particular, where you see Conor Gallagher and Nico Jackson providing the screen in front of Rodri, where he was unable to get on the ball. Like, he's a busy player. He likes to get into these pockets and whatnot to get on the ball. It was just good to see Chelsea finally keep an opponent from dictating what it is they want to do, making them look for secondary targets, secondary build-up plays, as opposed to their primary, which would have been Rodri there. I mean, if you look at the latter stages of that second half, you can see instances where Conor Gallagher is still touch tight to Rodri and just frustrating the hell out of him, so much so that Rodri just finally just ends up just pushing him, and that's a win for Conor Gallagher. When you know that you've gotten into the head of your opponent like that, you're frustrating the hell out of him like that, that's a win for you. Now, of course, much of this was successful because Chelsea were disciplined in their shape, and you didn't find a lot of guys going rogue trying to press the ball. The situations where that did happen, like this one here, where obviously Walker's on the ball and then Conor Gallagher leaves Rodri just to go press the ball a bit, is where they get out. And, of course, Rodri's on the ball and now dictating their attacking move again. And, this is what I'm talking about. Like, as soon as we lose our concentration, we lose our structure, we lose our shape and whatnot, it opens up lanes for the likes of Man City to exploit. And they were waiting for that all game. They were waiting for those opportunities where, we showed a lack of discipline, a lack of structure, a lack of composure. And we're looking for those opportunities to pounce on it. Fortunately for us, that did not happen very often. For the most part, we were very, very disciplined in that shape. And it just provided them with nowhere to go in the middle of the pitch. Now, you're probably finding yourself asking, what does Man City do when their plan A, their route one, is taken out of the mix and they, marked out of the game? Like, what's the next action? And of course, it's for those other number 8s, those attacking 8s like De Bruyne and Alvarez, who's playing as more of a number 10, to come deep and collect. And every time they got on the ball, they just looked uncomfortable. And for me, I mean, Kevin De Bruyne to me needs to be facing goal. When he's coming from back to goal with his back to goal, he's not as dangerous as when he is facing goal, obviously. And in this instance here, you can see exactly what happened and why he wasn't able to get on the ball very much either. Because the second wave of that box that we had in the midfield there, where you have Enzo and Caicedo were also in tandem the entire match and also kept the ball from getting into Kevin De Bruyne in that middle area, that central area of the pitch. So much of what Chelsea were doing the entire first half and for large chunks of the second half was making sure that they're keeping the two conduits off the ball and forcing everything out to the flanks, where of course Manchester City have only really one 1v1 dribbler in Doku. But I mean, for the entire first half and much of the second half, he was marked out of that game too, like with Cole Palmer and Gusto playing in tandem and keeping him, in front of him and not allowing him to get into dangerous areas very often. It was just a performance where you can see if you cut off the supply line for Manchester City, they can put a lot of pressure on you in the final third, but truly they become toothless when they do not have the supply line of a Rodri, just building the, first phase build up and then getting into the second phase. And then of course getting Kevin De Bruyne central on the ball. Most of the time where Kevin De Bruyne was dangerous in this match was when he got into the wide areas and was able to, get on the ball and swing in those crosses from wide areas. But for the most part, where he's most dangerous is when he has the ability to pick passes, slip people in behind and whatnot. And we just basically stifled him today, and he had no opportunity to get into those areas very often. Now, I just want to give Nico Jackson his flowers in this next segment because I feel like he's a little bit underappreciated in the Chelsea circles for the work that he does, not only on the ball, but off the ball specifically. There are aspects of his game that I really feel have developed over the last few months that a lot of people have really been taking notice of. Obviously, his pressing is very good, but his discipline in the shape that we're trying to occupy, his discipline and understanding when people go forward, he has to hold back sometimes just to keep the shape intact, is an awareness, that a defensive awareness that I don't take lightly, I don't take for granted either. I think that when you possess that at a young age and you are disciplined enough to execute it, and you are taking on the instruction of the manager and executing it at a high level, those are building blocks for the future. I mean, not only that, but whenever we're getting into the second phase of our build-up play, the second phase where you see Nico Jackson drop deep to either link play, layoffs, flicks, anything, he is exceptional in those roles, where, he comes deep, he has time on the ball to just make a decision to get somebody into a better position. I really value what he does in the second phase of our build-up, just because there's not many people that, can do that at pace and understands where the spaces are to attack and exploit as well. The only thing right now that we're waiting on Nicolas Jackson to deliver now is just in the final third, where he makes better decisions there, where he's more clinical there and whatnot. But everything that he's doing off the ball right now, everything that he's doing in our press sequences, everything that he's doing even just in our second phase build-up and whatnot has been exceptional. It's exactly what you want. It's almost to the point where if he gets the other aspects of his game together, like obviously get the bonehead gene out of his head where he's doing things to collect yellow cards that don't involve working hard and tackling and whatnot, or where he gets into the final third and is not making the clever enough runs or timing his runs well enough to, get into opportunities where he can score goals, or even just doing the last bits of just scoring the goal when he has the opportunities to do that, being more clinical. If he gets that stuff together, which is probably the hardest bit, I have no doubt in my mind that we have a player for the future and one that can help us win a lot of games going forward. Now, it wouldn't be right of me to speak on this video about how Chelsea were so disciplined and, composed and, snuffed out most of their attacking moves if I didn't mention Axel Disasi, who for me was the man of the match. Now, he was the guy that was the real commanding presence in that back line for me, a guy that just snuffed out every attacking move. I think there's a stat somewhere that, he had 16 clearances, which is the most we've had in maybe like 10 years. And, it's not like you're playing at, Stamford Bridge or this is Etihad, where the pressure is consistently on you for the 90 minutes that you play. And to have that sort of composure, that sort of discipline, and just be switched on the entire game, the focus that it takes to be switched on the entire game and snuff out all those attacking moves that just keep coming at you wave after wave after wave. You just have to give credit for that kind of like gutsy performance. Now, obviously they did concede late on in that game where it takes a couple deflections and finds the back of the net, but I'm telling you, the resolve and the resilience of that defense led by Disasi was something that we can build on once again. If he continues to show that real boss presence in the back, I think that we might have less to deal with in the transfer market in terms of building our spine. And it's no coincidence to me that this is coming with Thiago Silva sidelined with an injury. I mean, we saw it in the previous match where Thiago Silva was rested and Disasi and Badiashile formed our back line. And, you just got a more commanding presence from Disasi. And I feel like he has to be more of the deputy when he's in that role next to Thiago Silva. And I don't think that they complement each other in that role, like one being the sheriff and one being the deputy. I really think that if you're going to redefine this defensive shape, you're going to redefine that back line, you have to allow for Disasi to grow in that role of being like the bossy, captain of that back line. And he's showing signs that he's ready for the role. I mean, he's not young. He's not like a 21, 22-year-old. He's like 25, 26. And, entering his prime years as far as defenders go. And, if we continue to give him that opportunity to grow into that role a bit more and be that commanding presence, be that leader for us, I think that he might be able to provide us with the leadership that we need back there. Composure, discipline, resolve, structure. These are all the words that come to mind when you think about what Chelsea did at Etihad the other day. You now have a performance, a blueprint that you can reference from weeks and weeks and weeks after the fact. When you put in a shift like that at Etihad and you show people that the determination, the composure, the discipline, all this stuff works to achieving a positive result. You can now sell that to that young team and tell them this is the effort that we need from you week in, week out in order to, deliver the results that we need right now. We just have to take those next steps now to really, really start hurting these better teams, these bigger teams in the final third, but that just shows that there's a maturity happening within the squad right now. That just shows that we're starting to take on the instruction that the manager is giving us right now. We possess a game plan that we all buy into, and that's what you want. Obviously, Pochettino's a little bit more of a slow burn. He's a guy that takes, the second year before you start seeing the best of his football. And for me, it was always going to be in and around this period of the season where I needed to start seeing what it is that this team is working on. When we get a little bit more healthy, when we start getting this younger team to understand the advanced tactics that this manager is trying to employ. This is where I needed to start seeing the real returns here, and it's starting to come slowly. We're not by any means, the finished article, and by no means is this performance at the Etihad, mean that when we're going to go into the weekend at the Carabao Cup final and produce the same results, because even with that said, we still have a young, inconsistent side. But like I said before, we do have a blueprint for effort now. We do have a structure. We do now have a template for effort and energy that we can implement and reference when we're looking for big performances from our players. And that's what I'm most proud of after just collecting 1 point at Etihad. The fact that we now have something that we can hang our hat on and say, if we can replicate this sort of performance with a little bit more precision and sharpness in the final third, sky's the limit for this team. But I do think I'm going to wrap it up there. Ladies and gentlemen, what a performance. Again, 60, 70, 75 minutes of stifling the world's best attack, in my opinion. The tutelage of Pep Guardiola has this team well tuned. They know what to do when it comes to scoring goals, especially at the Etihad, and we came so close to shutting them out. Obviously, they haven't had that happen in about 15 months of football, getting shut out at the Etihad. And it was an opportunity for us to do that. Unfortunately, we conceded late, but again, that doesn't take a lot of the shine away from the performance. We had some strong performances all over the pitch. Malo Gusto against, obviously a very tricky Doku did a fantastic job of just keeping him in check and whatnot in his back pocket with the help of Cole Palmer. When he was getting forward, he was very threatening as well, putting in some telling balls and whatnot. So I think with Malo Gusto, we have a guy that is defensively astute and offensively, deadly. We could utilize him on both flanks, I think, when Reece James is back to full fitness. And of course, Disasi, my man of the match, another fantastic performance in that, commanding defender role. We also had Conor Gallagher doing a fantastic job doing what he does best. These are the games that you want Conor Gallagher to be, in the role that he's in that number 8, number 10 role. This is where his energy and his enthusiasm and his relentlessness and his, his passion and his pace and whatnot comes to the fore. And Nico Jackson, I mean, didn't really do much in front of goal, but a very, very telling ball into Raheem Sterling for the first one. And another day, a little bit more luck, the ball's not under his feet, and he probably scores the first goal anyways. But I just want to say that we've had a lot of really, really good performances, many that I haven't even really touched on, but these are the building blocks that take us into the next few performances, and let's just hope that we can replicate the effort, the energy, the composure, the discipline in this next match, which is the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool. But until then, keep the blue flag flying high enough, the Chels. Peace.